Going on, guys? We're back here today talking Marvel's What If Season 1, Episode 7. Not exactly the penultimate episode quite yet. We still got 2 episodes to go. I know Chris was saying in the DMs right before I started watching this on Wednesday that it was his favorite episode yet, and it was my favorite episode as well. I was skeptical going into it. I mean, I saw the title. I knew what it was going to be about, but I wasn't exactly sure until I watched, and I absolutely love this episode, so we're going to get into it. But, Chris, you're back here as well. BR_Doctor on the Twitter machine. Chris Mueller, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much. And yes, this definitely is my favorite episode so far.
And there's been some good ones. The last couple of episodes I thought were solid, but not exactly amazing. So when you said this was your favorite, yeah, and there's been a lot of good ones. Don't get me wrong. There hasn't been a bad episode yet, I don't think. Some have been better than others. But when you said that, it gave me hope. And then I watched it. And as a big Ragnarok fan and this kind of incarnation of Thor, I absolutely loved it. So yeah, this was probably my favorite episode so far too. Phil, you're back, my man. You're on the Twitter machine of PhilDL616. Phil, what's going on, dude?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing great. So let's get right into this, guys. Chris, kind of going off what you just said right there, I'll ask you right off the bat, what made this your favorite episode to date? I mean, we've had 7 so far, some good ones, some great ones. I was talking with someone the other day about, which ones were the best so far. I really enjoyed Captain Carter and the T'Challa one in episode 2. This may have had those 2 trumped, at least in my opinion. But what made this your favorite episode of the season so far, dude?
Mainly the level of humor. This was just a really funny episode to me. But also the amount of different characters from around the Marvel universe that showed up in this one. This is probably the most we've seen in one place. So it was just really funny to see some of these characters interacting.
Yeah, countless cameos. I mean, it reminds me of the T'Challa episode in that respect because, like, you had Drax back, obviously not Dave Bautista reprising the role for reasons we've already discussed, but, you had Drax. You even had the Grand Master in there, and I think I made the comment like a week or two ago that he was in that preview for the second half of the season, so I knew he would be in the episode, but I don't think it was Jeff Goldblum. I'm almost positive it wasn't. It didn't sound exactly like him anyway, but it's still cool to see the Grand Master back and so many other characters from all across the MCU, so yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights from this episode. What about you, Phil? Your thoughts on this episode? Where did it rank for you among the other episodes? Was it among your favorites so far, too?
Yeah, I think it was definitely one of the more enjoyable episodes because it was so lighthearted. Some of the other episodes got a little heavy, and this one, it kept the same tone throughout.
So that's one of the things, too, because I was talking to someone yesterday about this, and I asked for their thoughts on the episode, and both he and his girlfriend said, having watched it, said they did not like it at all just because they don't like Thor. So do you think this is one of those episodes where, I mean, I'm biased because I love like Ragnarok and I love like the lighthearted stuff. The serious stuff is great too, depending on how they do it. But I mean, I'm a sucker for these type of episodes. So, Phil, do you think that this episode is kind of dependent on how much you like the Thor character and how goofy he is and the whole Ragnarok take on it?
I can see that. If you're one of those people that didn't enjoy the first Thor movie because he was on Earth and it was so much humor and there's so much Darcy and stuff like that, I could see you turning your nose up at this episode.
Yeah, I could totally understand. It's all entirely subjective, of course. What about you, Chris? Could you understand some people not liking this episode as much because they did kind of go a goofier route than a lot of the other episodes we've seen so far?
I mean, maybe. The one thing that this episode gave me that none of the other episodes did was it felt like at least certain moments were very Disney. Like the way that they animated some of the faces, like Thor and Jane specifically, felt like very Disney-like expressions. So it definitely felt slightly different from the other episodes. And I guess if you don't like Thor, a Thor-centric episode's not going to make you happy, but it was also a different portrayal of Thor than what we've seen. Like, yeah, we've seen Thor be kind of a reckless idiot, but this showed him as just like kind of a dumb bro, but in the funniest way possible. So, yeah, I could understand why some people might not like it. Everything is subjective to opinion, but it's... I just don't understand how you couldn't at least find some of it funny.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of entertainment in this one, and 35 minutes, around the same length as the other episodes, and I don't know, I thoroughly enjoyed this entire thing. I'll probably go back and watch it for a second time. I enjoyed it that much, but where exactly does this episode fall in the timeline, because I was under the impression it was around the time of the first movie, but then you have like members of the Guardians in there, and not just Drax. Like we saw Rocket at one point, I think with Groot, if I'm not mistaken. So, Chris, can you kind of enlighten me as to where in the timeline this exactly falls, and in addition to what we saw at the end there with Ultron and whatever?
Well, this is definitely supposed to be taking place around the time of the first movie because, for one, Odin goes into the Odin sleep just like he does in the first movie. Mm-hmm. But also the whole thing with Darcy and Jane, like out in the middle of the desert doing their experiments, where was Selvig, by the way?
Yeah, but I was wondering, yeah.
They mentioned Selvig at one point.
They mentioned him, yeah, but you think he would have, like, actually been, even if they couldn't get the voice actor, like, that would be an easy voice for some of these actors to mimic. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was weird that he was kind of excluded a little bit, but, yeah, I do believe this is around the time of the first movie, and the whole Ultron thing showing up at the end, I don't think is anachronistic, because I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be an Ultron from a different part of the multiverse than these characters we're watching.
Okay, so a different part of the... I thought he was maybe from the future and he was coming through, but you're suggesting that it's from a different, multiverse dimension entirely.
Yeah, because at the end of the episode, you see the Watcher, like, surprised when he shows up.
Yeah, so that's what I was wondering, too. And obviously, with all these other endings, it's kind of like, hey, you fucking reap what you sow, like you guys get what you deserve, blah, blah, blah. But no, but this time he was actually surprised. So can you kind of go into that a little bit more, Phil? And let's talk about the ending right up front, because that was one of the biggest parts coming out of this episode. Ultra Vision, as a lot of people are calling him, showing up at the very end here, I thought was one of the cooler endings we've had so far this season. And I enjoyed the Killmonger episode last week, but the ending felt a bit abrupt. And we've talked before how they're almost definitely going to follow up on all of this, whether it be a crossover episode at the end of the season or, continuations in season 2, whatever it might be. I love this ending, but your thoughts, Phil, on that ending with Ultra Vision, as people are calling him, and how it kind of connects everything together.
I'm curious to see where this goes, because I agree. I think he's from another multiverse / timeline or whatever. But I'm wondering, why did he come there specifically? Mm-hmm. Like, what does he get? What is he coming there for? It can't be for one of the Infinity Gems, because it looks like he has all of them.
Do you think he's just going there to kill Thor, maybe? I had seen some speculation on that.
I don't know. I just wonder, what is his plan?
Yeah, we've talked a lot, Phil, over the course of not just these reviews, but, many other movie and show reviews that we've done about Ultron and how it connected to WandaVision. Did you feel, were you happy to see Ultron back after all this time?
Oh, yeah, I'm a big fan of Ultron, so I was happy to see him back. I kind of wonder if him having Vision's body is, if he's from a timeline where he was able to completely... shift his conscience to that body before the Avengers took it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So I'm interested to see how they kind of connect it all together with with Ultron and whatever. So yeah, no, I thought that was a cool ending, and I'm sure we'll see more of them in the episodes to come. But like you said earlier, Chris, we had so many cameos in this episode. We had everyone from the entire Thor cast for the most part, to Korg, to Drax, to Nebula.
Oh, I got
at
a
one
full
point.
list here.
I'm looking at some of the names right here, obviously, and just a bunch of other people. Was it cool for you? As someone we've talked about before, Howard the Duck. He was marrying Darcy at one point. It was quite the occasion.
I can't tell you how happy that made me to see Darcy and Howard get married. That was so stupid and funny to me. Darcy is one of those characters that, like, she gets a lot of hate from some Marvel fans because she's pure comic relief. But Kat Dennings is just so good in that role that I don't think you can help but kind of smile when she's on screen sometimes. Yeah. I especially loved when she was kind of having a fangirl moment over Captain Marvel. And she's just like, oh, you have a cat? That's awesome. What's its name? Goose. Oh, like Top Gun. Like, she just turns into a kid again. It was great. But yeah, some of the cameos in this were kind of interesting because, we got to see some Skrulls. Mm-hmm. We got to see Topaz and the Grand Master, like, years before all that stuff happened in Ragnarok. You get Crossbones, Maria Hill, and Coulson all together again. the Sovereign from Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the Surtur, like all these different people showed up. But I thought the coolest connection that I saw was, I'm kind of taking it as this version of Loki, the Frost Giant version, was the variant that we saw when they were showing Loki all the different versions of him in a hologram.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's like maybe they're connecting the two and saying like, yeah, this is acknowledging that that version of Loki does exist and this is him.
That would make sense. Yeah, I hope they follow up on that because I thought that was really interesting. I mean, let's talk about that for a second. Saw a lot of thirst post online about, Frostbite Loki and this variant of Loki and everything else. Your thoughts, Phil, on this version of Loki that we saw in this episode?
I thought it was good. I think it lends some credence to some people that are in the Loki was right fan base because it kind of lends credence to the belief that Odin kind of ruined Loki because he took him away from Jotunheim and then he put him in a better position, quote unquote. But then he put him in his position where he always had to live up to being behind Thor, and without that, you see him being a completely different person. It doesn't seem like he's, as obsessed with trying to please Odin and doing all this nefarious stuff to do that. But on the other hand, look what it does to Thor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it was, we'll talk about that too. I mean, in terms of the effect that not having Loki there really had on Thor. I mean, when you first see the description for this episode, Chris, are you expecting for this episode to take the route that it did? I mean, we kind of discussed before that Party Thor would be a character in one of the episodes on this show, but I didn't think it would be because Loki wasn't his brother, technically.
Yeah, I agree with Phil. This is a very interesting take for them to do because it essentially, like the beginning of the episode, you see that still frame of Odin giving Loki back to Laufey. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that created a peace between the two worlds. And now Loki and Thor are like just best friends and Loki's a cool dude. And yeah, it basically shows that had Loki been raised by his people, he wouldn't have turned out to be some evil, conniving, backstabbing dude. So I thought that was a very interesting way for them to take this. And man, I really hope we get follow-up on some of these things because I think it would be interesting to see more of this version of Loki just to see how they actually characterize him in other situations.
Yeah, that was funny too, because like you said, he wasn't a villain because of, the course of history that it took and whatever. He wasn't a villain in this episode, but like when Thor asks him to help clean up Earth and whatever, he's like, no, I'm bouncing, like I'm leaving, you can do it yourself, which was great. And I popped at the end with the ending when, they end up fixing everything and he makes the Leaning Tower of Pisa not exactly leaning anymore, which was great. That was really funny. They have the study group, they pay off that was hilarious. It was a really interesting route for them to take. I didn't think that this would be the route that they took in order to get Party Thor, but that's exactly what this was, and it was just really entertaining too. And I'm reading here that actually Grandmaster was Jeff Goldblum. I did not know that. I thought it was some other random voice actor.
No, that was him.
That's crazy. Was there anyone, I guess, Seth Green was obviously Howard the Duck again, blah, blah, blah. Everyone seemed to have reprised their roles, right? Except for, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. Was she the only one that wasn't, the character that it was in the movies?
I honestly thought that was Brie Larson, was it not?
No, so what other episode was she in? She was in, the Zombies episode, and then she made that quick cameo at the end of, I forgot what other episode she was in. But, no, yeah, it wasn't her. It sounded like her. It wasn't her. But yeah, I know that wasn't her. I was actually more surprised they got Natalie Portman back. But then again, she's in the next Thor movie, so I guess it makes sense that she was in this, right?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Whoever did Brie Larson did a good job of kind of mimicking her tone, because that was convincing to me. But yeah, like you could tell which people they got back pretty clearly, because like Heimdall didn't say a word, so obviously they didn't get Idris. Mm-hmm. Yondu didn't say a word, but we know that we've heard Michael Rooker, so I don't know. But yeah, it seemed like other than Drax, everybody else was sort of themselves. I don't remember if we actually heard Korg say anything, but I know Korg and Mantis were both there.
I think so.
And Clancy Brown definitely reprised his role as Surtur, which was awesome.
Yeah, no, that was cool. They pretty much got everyone back for the episode, and like we said, they had a lot of cameos in this thing, which was super cool to see. Yeah, no, it's saying that Korg was also voiced by Taika Waititi, so I guess they got him back for it as well, even though, I mean, obviously, if we can't remember what he said, if anything, then he probably didn't have a lot of lines.
That's right. He was running to jump into the pool, and he knocked Nick Fury out.
Oh,
and he's
right.
It's like, make way, or something like that. That also, what a ridiculous way to take Fury out of the fight. That was ridiculous, but funny.
And he reprised his role too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. What'd you say, Phil?
So, did you guys notice the Executioner is cool with Thor? So does that mean Hela is around somewhere?
So, that's what I was wondering.
That's just Scourge, right? Wasn't he there before Hela anyway? He's just always been on Asgard, I thought.
They just didn't show him in the first two movies, right?
Yeah, but
when Thor shows up, he, like, tells Thor, like, yeah, remember me? I was at blah, blah, blah with you, or something like that.
Yeah, but I was just wondering, because I was thinking, if he doesn't adopt Loki, does that mean, like, his relationship with Hela is also different?
Maybe. There really wasn't any reference to her in this one. I mean, the only reference we've seen to her was when the Collector had her little helmet. So yeah, I don't know.
That's what I was wondering too, because the title of the episode is "What if Thor was the only child?" Wouldn't that apply to her as well, and she wouldn't be in the picture? I mean, obviously they made no mention of her, but is it because she's a half sister or whatever that it wouldn't technically count?
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I just thought about that when he showed up on screen. I was like, okay, I wonder what that means for their relationship.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I hope maybe they'll get into it if they continue this episode. But if they do continue the episode, which it looks like they will, where do you guys think that they'll go from here with, Party Thor and the Ultra Vision stuff? We kind of talked about it briefly, but Phil, I'll start with you. What's a part 2 to this episode do you think it's going to look like?
I'm assuming we're going to catch up to part 2 with whatever the Watcher is going to do to interfere, because I feel like that's going to have something to do with what he does to finally interfere.
Yeah, no, that would make sense. I mean, especially since, like we said earlier, he was saying, we were talking about how he was surprised by what happened. So, Chris, do you concur with that? We're probably going to see him finally interfere, maybe in the next episode, but in the season finale in 2 weeks?
Yeah, it definitely feels like whatever's happening at the end of this episode is potentially going to kick off that rumored team-up thing that we've sort of talked about. So I'm very curious to see where this goes, because an Ultron with all the Infinity Stones would be probably even scarier than Thanos.
I was going to say,
because he's got, like, no sense of humanity, Like, if Thanos was at least somewhat, like, I don't want to say sympathetic, but, like, he thought what he was doing was the right thing, and just everybody else couldn't see his thoughts. But with Vision, it's like, he's a cold robot who only reasons based on his own thoughts. So, yeah, I do think that will be the maybe the big overall threat of whatever this team up ends up being.
So what was his original goal in Age of Ultron? Was it just to completely destroy the world, or was there something more to it than that? I don't remember.
Well, yeah, I think he basically wanted to destroy humanity in order to, like, restart it, because humanity was the biggest threat to the Earth, which was essentially what Stark designed him for, was to protect the Earth. And this is a common thing with, like, rogue AIs, in order to protect the Earth, we got to get rid of the humans because they're the ones doing the most damage. I think it's basically why Skynet decides to get rid of the humans in the Terminator movies. So, yeah, that's a pretty common trope when it comes to these types of stories.
Yeah, I just still love that part of Age of Ultron where he takes one look at the internet and he's like, yep, y'all gotta go.
I know, right?
Yeah, no, it's funny too because I guess that would make, like you said, Chris, that would make Thanos, I guess, a bit better of the two because he only wants to wipe out 50% of people on Earth and not everybody, whereas Ultron just wants to kill everyone. So I guess I would probably have to side with Thanos. But do you think we might see a collision of the two? I mean, if we get some sort of crossover, the end of this episode combined with the Zombies one. The Zombies one saw Thanos, Zombie Thanos specifically, have all of the Infinity Stones. Could we see a mashup of the Infinity Stones with Zombie Thanos and Ultra Vision here?
Maybe, but I think it's more likely that we would see the Thanos from the episode where he was basically a Ravager.
Oh, from the T'Challa one, right?
Yeah, because he didn't die, did he? He was still alive at the end of that, right?
Yeah, he was still alive, wasn't he? I think so.
Yeah, he was in Wakanda when they went back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was trying to explain his thing to Okoye, and she's like, "It sounds like genocide." He's like, "But it's efficient." That's right.
I do think that that's the way to go to use him. So when he gets one look at Ultron, he's like, I mean, it is efficient.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, I totally forgot about that. So hopefully we get to see him collide maybe with this version of Vision or Ultron or whatever you want to call him. But no, I love this episode. It gave me Ragnarok vibes. I love the cameos. The story they told was interesting. It was something different than what I was expecting in a good way. And I love the ending too. So, Chris, any other outstanding thoughts from this episode of what we didn't discuss yet?
I do have some random observations. Mm-hmm. First of all, was Korg on ecstasy? Because he was sucking on a pacifier, which is absolutely something that people who do ecstasy have to do to stop themselves from grinding their teeth.
I didn't even notice that.
Most definitely.
He's got a pacifier in his mouth when they're on that bridge partying. I thought it was hilarious how the second Odin was asleep, Frigga's like, all right, I'm going to go hang out with the girls.
Yeah, that was great.
that was amazing. But whoever wrote this episode did a great job because there's some really funny background moments that are easy to miss. Like when Jane is talking to Crossbones at her door, the morning after she meets Thor. I love how you can hear Thor wake up in the background. He's just like, so we getting food? Yeah. And then a few seconds later, he just starts laughing and goes, look at the tiny rabbit in the sink, talking about Rocket.
Yeah. Oh, the rabbit, right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thor knocking down Stonehenge like a bunch of dominoes put a smile on my face.
Yeah, and then Jane was like, we just have them there. They were just supposed to be there or something. They can't explain why they're that way or whatever.
Yeah, she's just like, these are, well, nobody knows what they are, but they're important.
Yeah.
I hope at some point we get to meet Gary the Goat.
Yeah, so what was that about? Because they talked about him destroying the planet, but he didn't actually. He was like, yeah, they were fine, eventually. What do you think that whole thing was about?
Well, he said it was like a meteor that was already being destroyed, and they just helped it along. Who knows if that was him just lying to make Jane feel better, but yeah. I think it'd be hilarious if that goat ends up being, because there's the rumor, apparently in the comics, Thor rides a big goat sometimes, and there's rumors that the Gary goat thing is a reference to the goat that's going to appear in Thor 4.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be cool.
The Grandmaster and Topaz on rascal scooters at the end was really funny to me.
Yeah, they said they were going to scoot our way out of here or whatever, right?
Yeah. And, so I don't know. We talked about this before. There's a woman who keeps showing up in these episodes but has no lines. She has pink hair, and she appears to be an Asgardian. She was, with Thor a bunch of times. I'm really confused as to who this is.
What other episode was she in? Did it involve Thor?
She was in the one... in the last episode she appeared to be more of hanging out with the Ravagers, because she was sitting at the table with Yondu and Thanos and all those guys during that episode where Star-Lord was actually T'Challa. But she never has any lines. They just show her in the background all over the place. And I don't know if it's just because they're reusing random aliens or if it's because she's a character that I just can't place.
I was going to say maybe she's from the movies, but we just never hear from her. I don't remember.
I don't remember either, but it was really confusing to me to see her pop up so many times in this episode and not knowing who she is.
When you said the woman with no lines, I thought you were going to say the woman that was on like the beach or something. I thought that would come back to be revealed as someone important, but they never acknowledged it again. It was when they show Carol Danvers in the sky, but like from afar. She was like, I don't know, flying or something like that, and they kind of get this quick shot of like Hawaii or some shit like that, and there's some woman on the beach in a lounge chair watching Carol Danvers fly by in the sky, but we don't actually see her face or like we don't find out who it is. I thought that might have been someone important, but I don't think so.
I think that was more of an establishing shot to show like their fight is going from Western Europe all the way to the tropics. Like,
okay.
It just because, she's sitting there on a beach drinking a tropical drink with a sun hat on.
Yeah, no, I figured if they were going to do that, it would be either more people or just no one there at all, because it was just one person, so that's why it made me curious.
But the only other observation I had from this episode is that they sort of established that Captain Marvel is not worthy, because Thor was able to just put the hammer on her and keep her down.
Yeah, so that's been a question for a while, right? As to whether she was worthy or not, and clearly she's not now.
I think after Endgame, there were some people like, oh, could Carol have picked up the hammer like Steve? And in this show, anyway, it doesn't look like she could.
So yeah. that was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
I was just gonna say that I just think their fight was really, really good. It was better than I thought it was gonna be because the rest of the episode wasn't taken seriously. But their fight actually looked good. It actually had some good visual moments. No, it was way cooler than I thought it was gonna be for like a quick one-off.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty well done fight. I thought they did a great job with it. And as far as the worthy thing goes, I mean, I guess it's because Odin's sleeping, but wouldn't you think this incarnation of Thor, party Thor, him slacking off and whatever, wouldn't be deemed worthy? Or is it just the fact that Odin's sleeping that he can't take away his worthiness? I was a little curious about that too.
Well, I always have taken the whole worthy thing as not to necessarily mean good, just to mean like strong-willed, because I think, didn't we see Thanos pick up one of his weapons in Endgame? Was it Stormbreaker or? But it looked like Thor was surprised, and then Hela has wielded Mjolnir before and crushed it in her hand. Like, it has more to do, I think, with just your willpower and drive than it does how good you are as a person.
That makes sense now. Yeah, I guess when you bring up the Hela thing, that would make it make more sense. And yeah, we don't see Odin wake up from his deep sleep, right? He's sleeping the entire episode.
Yeah. 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 I mean, regardless if he sleep, the enchantment on the hammer would still work. Yeah. So I'm assuming him still being worthy because he's not inherently bad in this episode. I think he is just. He's just irresponsible, and him being irresponsible and not stepping into basically what he's destined to be doesn't make him unworthy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And then one last thing, Chris, you mentioned when you were talking about the episode going into it yesterday before I had or Wednesday or whatever, I didn't know what you were talking about until I saw the episode when Thor said, "I only boom in private." I thought that was the highlight of the episode for me.
That was such a ridiculous line. I'm surprised that didn't take off more.
Yeah, it should have, yeah.
One thing we do need to talk about, though, is how some characters were characterized in this episode much different than we've seen them in live action. Like, I felt like Jane felt different in this than the first Thor movie. Like, the Jane we saw who met Thor for the first time, I don't think she would have been going out to the club dancing with him on that first night.
No, I don't think so either. I feel like that happened with another episode where I was wondering why they were different than they were in the movie, and I think you had mentioned that they kind of just did it for the show or the sake of the episode or whatever, or for whatever reason. But yeah, no, I was wondering the same thing. Like, she felt like she was almost trying a little too hard to get his attention, and like she fell in love with him a little too quickly. And maybe I just don't remember the original movie, but I don't remember it going down like that. But I felt like they just did that for the sake of the episode, probably, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about with the Disney-fication of this episode earlier. Like, when she first sees him, that big smile and her eyes widening is like very Cinderella.
Yeah, yep. That's totally Disney.
But you know what? I thought that this was the best characterization of Carol Danvers that we've seen. This was so much better than her Captain Marvel movie, and it felt like this episode, at one point, I almost felt like it was an intentional nod to it when Thor calls her a party pooper, and then everybody starts pointing at her and just chanting pooper at her. It felt like that was almost a response to people being like, well, she's not fun in her movie. Like, what's going on? Marvel's supposed to be fun. And it just felt like this episode was like, okay, we're going to portray her as fun, but we're also going to acknowledge that other people don't see her as fun. And then at the end, there's that line with Thor where he's just like, oh, you got to cheer up and smile more. And then you just see her start seeing red, like she's about to kill him for telling her to smile more. I thought that was a nice little bit of continuity. But this is my favorite portrayal of Carol that we've had so far. And I'd like to see her be a little more like this in the next movie, because I do think that they finally nailed the character a little bit.
Yeah, we've seen her in how many movies now? She was in Endgame, she was in her own movie, we've seen her make a few cameos here and there, but do you think we haven't fully seen the full character scope of Brie Larson's Captain Marvel? Now, this wasn't Brie Larson, but do you think they will incorporate this into the movies at some point, hopefully soon?
I mean, I think the next Captain Marvel movie will definitely have a different tone than the first one, especially because it's going to be somewhat of an ensemble due to the fact that they're bringing in Teyana Paris's character from WandaVision, as well as Miss Marvel from the Miss Marvel show. I believe the next Captain Marvel movie is just called The Marvels.
I was going to say, was that a show or is that a movie? I don't remember.
That's supposed to be the Captain Marvel sequel, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Miss Marvel's show is just Miss Marvel.
Oh, okay. That's what I'm mistaking it with. Okay.
So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they put her with these other women and maybe change her a little bit, because even though there are parts of the first Captain Marvel movie that I do like, I don't think it's the best way that they could have portrayed the character. So I'm curious to see what they'll do else, because I do like Brie Larson for the most part. I think she's a good actress, and I think she's underrated comedically. Like, she's actually genuinely good in that 21 Jump Street movie that she's in, and she was in a few episodes of The League back in the day. So she has comedy chops. It's just she's done so many of these serious movies like Short Term 12 and Room, where it's such a downer of a story, like, oh, a woman's being captive for years. Like, yeah, you're not going to be funny in that. But I do hope that she gets a chance to sort of loosen up a little bit in this next movie.
I hope so. I don't know what the timeline on it is, though. Is it coming out next year, do you know, or is it a little bit further than that?
My guess is it'll be further. They're probably going to do 2023 or 2024 for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got a ton of movies on the docket, so, there's a lot of stuff coming up, but I'm interested to see how she's portrayed, coming off of like a show like this, where it's not her portraying the character, but hopefully they can kind of, not just simply make her more funny, just make her more interesting in general, but, that's just my opinion, but, no, yeah, this was a great episode. Do you guys know what they're doing for next week? Because I'm assuming, like we've said, the last one will likely be some sort of a crossover thing. We saw it in the preview a little bit. It has to be. Are there any ideas or any, the reveals for what each episode would be about that we haven't seen yet? Because the only one that I knew that was coming up that we hadn't seen yet was this. But we still have one more to go until the final season finale. Do you guys know what the next episode might be about? Have they revealed that yet?
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything either.
Yeah, maybe they'll put up like a preview or the character art. You mentioned Chris before. I know sometimes they do that earlier on in the week before the episode actually comes out. So we'll see. We got a couple days. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I'll probably go back and watch it. I enjoyed it so much. And we got 2 episodes to go, and then Hawkeye comes out in late November, and Eternals comes out in November, and obviously closing out the year with the Spider-Man movie. Obviously, No Way Home coming up in late December, so I look forward to those. Chris, you're on the Twitter machine at BR_Dr. Phil, you're on Twitter at PhilDL616. This has been great, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks.
Thanks.